Hi-ho Silver, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And Jacob Wile, too.
And we're back with Season 4 of the Great Ranking Podcast. That's right, tonight. And this time around, we're talking about 90s cartoons, folks. We're ranking all of them. Not really. Z&K chat, or Z&K channel, I'm sorry, is here in the chat. Words. He says he's calling us out. And this is entirely my fault based on my wording. He says, so you guys got back on the every cartoon ever option that won the poll. Yeah, we did. Then Z&K also says that also makes it more intriguing, seeing what tunes made the final cut. All right, so with that in mind, Dragon, I'm going to throw it to you. I want you to kind of just explain like the format of the master list really quick, and then since we're going kind of alphabetically with this, you can kind of give your sort of reasoning and how your ranking system and everything, your parameters.
Yeah, so folks, obviously, my cohort here kind of boxes in somewhat in terms of like, hey, let's do a 90s. Apparently, I had no idea about this. Apparently, there was a every cartoon ever option, then it was limited to 90s. And then, well, here we are. So basically, in limiting the 90s, we basically went through painstakingly. We figured, well, we can't necessarily section off all the 90s shows, or else it's going to be disproportionate. There's going to be all these subsections and then changes in networks and what counts as what counts as this. Basically, we put together all the 90s shows. At the very least, all the ones that at least we had seen, or at least seen in passing, or at the very least, basically as much 90s as we could jam into a list that did not include the following. It did not include adult animated stuff like like Family Guy and Simpsons and South Park, or anime, because the tricky thing with anime is then you have like when it originally was broadcast and then dubbed, and when we would have seen it, and for me it was like the Toonami years, so it was a whole rigmarole there. So we just kind of simplified it to essentially the stuff marketed towards kind of towards the kids and I suppose maybe the kids and the teen audience, mainly the kids audience from the 90s. So we kind of listed it all out there. So in the comments of each video, you can see what we were picking from, which I believe I
it's in the video description, Dragon, not the comments.
Oh, sorry. Well, I mean, it's in the. Oh, you're right. It's in the video description. Yes. Guess now you got me. It's catching, Tiki. You're calling Z&K channel Z&K chat. I'm calling the comments. That anyway. So point being, folks, in the video description we have, I believe, 55, if not maybe 55 plus, shows that basically will be at least. Basically, we're going to have a list of 30 each. It's going to be a 3-part installment here. So each of us have 30 selected from this list that we kind of picked from this list to put as like the basically our 30 greatest 90s cartoons. So I mean, for example, I guess we're going to each have different criteria for ranking these specifically. For me, again, I kind of went for a middle ground between kind of like best, but mostly kind of nostalgic, as in the shows that really did it for me. They're really kind of woven into my 90s, kind of cartoon experience, what I look for in a 90s cartoon, what I like about it. That doesn't mean necessarily you watched them all in the 90s. Some of these might have been like you caught a little bit in the 90s, then as the years went on, you went back, you watched them all. That's not to say necessarily all of us watched every single episode of these shows and recall them perfectly. Some of these shows, yes. Not all of them, no. Because again, some of us were kind of going from like what aired with these shows and what we could recapture on VHS or what you can find. And some of these did not get the best of releases over the years. It's a little hard to discern.
Not to mention all the different streaming services.
Exactly, all the streaming services. To put it simply, these are the shows that at least we authoritatively could rank based on like a fond nostalgia for being familiar enough with it, having seen at least, let's say, more than a minimum of like 3 to 5 episodes, and we can at least say I've watched I have a good vibe on this show. I have seen it. I know who the characters are. At least I have a fervor for it. I have a passion. I know these shows.
Yeah, it's usually the names are usually the things the show's named after.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. So again, for me, it's kind of like, for example, something to say if folks don't get your hopes up. There are some Marvel shows I would have desperately loved to put on this list, but we couldn't quite again, couldn't quite pass the 30 mark on this, so we kind of had to leave it at 30. So some of these shows, which you will not find X-Men on my list, but some of you may gasp at, and I don't think you're going to find X-Men on any of our lists. I could be wrong. But yeah, it's just a show that for me, I prefer I prefer Wolverine the X-Men, for example, and that came far beyond the 90s. So yeah, it did not make the list. And had this been like 35 or 31, it would have made it. So there you go.
All right, Jacob, what was really quick? What was your kind of grading scale on this thing?
Well, my criteria was kind of similar to Dragons, but like I think, I mean, most of it involved like a trying to strike a balance between like how I felt with how like I watched what I watched back in the day, like the memories I have associated with it, and obviously rewatching it in the modern, watching some of them in the modern day and putting in my perspective on them now. Granted, a lot of them I haven't been able to rewatch since then, so I am some of them maybe just relying solely on nostalgia for them or what I can remember. Huh. But it's like I think like Dragon, like a mixture of quality and the feelings I have towards them in the first place. Like I mainly more lean towards like my own personal opinions of them, regardless of their perceived quality elsewhere.
Totally. Okay, really quick, I want to shout out a couple comments. We have Atomic Beast who says, "Hi guys, the '90s when cartoons were at its peak,
Tiki,
and not in danger of going to the abyss of streaming service cancellation."
Tiki, with that comment in mind, we probably should take a moment, just given what we're doing here. We should kind of have like an ode to the '90s. Perhaps we should say why we're doing this.
Because I decided to put it on a poll because I thought it would be fun.
Well, and I gathered that, Tiki. I mean, why are the '90s fun? Like, why don't you tell the kids why the '90s are cool?
I don't know. We grew up in them. We all know them. It's a very I don't know what you want me to say. Are you?
Well, that's what I want you to say. Just say it with a little more oomph.
We grew up in the '90s. We love the '90s. It's the golden era. It was the era of creator-driven cartoons. Yeah.
There you go. Was that so hard? Okay.
No.
Hey, I was born in '94.
Okay.
Right. So we have Sonia also saying favorite cartoons are Rugrats, Hey Arnold, Scooby-Doo, and Rocket Power.
Well, Scooby-Doo doesn't qualify as there wasn't really anything from Scooby-Doo in the '90s.
Yeah.
Well, there was Zombie Island, which was very '90s, but yeah, no cartoons.
Yeah,
although
it was a movie, not a series. So yeah.
'90s kids were very familiar with Scooby-Doo. Where are you though? Through Cartoon Network.
Well, but like besides the movies, there wasn't like a series.
I would have loved to have put a pup named Scooby-Doo on this, but that came out technically in the '80s, so we couldn't do that.
Yeah, and trust me, if there was like trust me, if the movies made it on there, then we definitely would have included Zombie Island.
Of course.
Okay, Z&K says on the subject of the 90s are good. Check out the fan comic 1990 something. Interesting. I will.
So Tiki, but since you asked us, what was your criteria?
Yeah, I have kind of like a three-way criteria in mind for myself where definitely nostalgia plays a part of it, but I didn't want nostalgia to be like most of my criteria. The episode quality, I feel like looking back, basically, Dragon, you mentioned something like how many individual episodes can I recall? That definitely played a part of it. Also, kind of like the fundamentals, like how important was it in the evolution? So, for example, I have one very early Cartoon Network show in my top 10. I don't want to give away exactly what it is, but it's not necessarily the most memorable thing, but it was a very important kind of fundamental stepping stone to future Cartoon Network things. So historical relevance played a part. And also just premise. Premise is a big thing for me. I think, especially when it comes to cartoons, if you have a premise that can really hook you, that can go a long way. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I did take that into account as well. I mean, it's kind of hard to nail down exactly what, like, mainly, like, a lot of it does narrow down to, like, how I particularly felt.
Sure.
But, like, a lot of it, there is, like, I can't really say there's a concrete way I rank these things. Like, like I'm honestly, funnily enough, I started with I picked like the 5 in my top 10 before I picked anything else.
And again, these are the risks you have when it's called the Great 90s Cartoon Ranking Podcast, where again, it's just great. It doesn't say how or specifically top, favorite, what have you, just great. Are these great? To me, they're great. To you, they're great. The guy a few lines over, maybe it's not so great, but it's there.
Aquatad, Pup Named Scooby-Doo was 1988, so barely missed the cutoff.
Yeah, but he says, was it in the 90s or was that a red herring?
Red herring!
All right, well, you know what's not a red herring?
What's
What?
not a red herring?
Thanks for the enthusiasm. Now I know how it feels.
Yeah.
The fact that it's time to start the list. We're going to go in alphabetical order. So, Dragon, what's your number 30?
How is that remotely a red herring?
That's what he said. It wasn't a red herring.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I did say it wasn't a red herring. Yeah.
Okay.
That was his whole point.
Yeah, no, he's right. Okay, so number 30. Two Stupid Dogs.
Oh, man. Yeah. Big cornerstone there. Go ahead.
Again, I was on the fringes because I really agonized over whether
No, Dragon, it's higher up for me, buddy. I love Two Stupid Dogs. I feel you.
Yeah, I was on the fringes of whether or not to, because ultimately I was between X-Men the Animated Series and Two Stupid Dogs, because I've seen all of X-Men the Animated Series, but again, as I said, I kind of like the other iterations of that a little bit more, and honestly, the animation style always turned me off on X-Men the Animated Series personally. It always looked like a step removed from G.I. Joe, and like the hits never really fully connected, the storytelling drama was there, but the execution was always like a hair off to me. It felt like let's Xerox the comics, kind of like we did in the 60s, only give it like a G.I. Joe flourish. But that's kind of my relationship with the X-Men until later on. I think it got a little better overall. But Two Stupid Dogs, though, Two Stupid Dogs is kind of like the penny that kind of keeps turning up when you go through the list. You know, it's sort of like the simplicity of Hanna-Barbera, but for the 90s. That's the best way I could describe Two Stupid Dogs. You know, they have very appealing designs. I love Brad Garrett as Big Dog, as the big gray dog with the purple nose. He always pretty much a dog of few words, but when he spoke, you usually speechify and it'd be great. And honestly, when I think of the 90s and I think of like some of the great running gags from the 90s, Two Stupid Dogs have one of the great ones with Mr. Holiday. I think this guy's name technically is Mr. Hollywood. He was like this big kind of lunkhead looking, kind of gorilla looking guy. And his big catchphrase was anything that's going on, I think the probably popular clip you'd find is like little birds like tweeting with the wrong musical note or something, like tweet. And he goes, "Oh, isn't that cute? But it's wrong!"
Oh my God! Yes. Oh,
The joke from Two Stupid Dogs. It's perfect.
Absolutely.
It got reused a lot, but I never got tired of it. So ultimately, Two Stupid Dogs to me in the pantheon of our '90s shows here, it's a cute comfort watch, man. You know, it's also I love the fact it was paired with Secret Squirrel, which was always great as well. And apparently, back in the day, it was kind of viewed as like Hanna-Barbera's. I don't think this is truly what it was, but I think it was kind of like this kind of disseminated. Like this was Hanna-Barbera's response to like we want our own Ren and Stimpy, because Ren and Stimpy was ridiculously popular back then. And it was like, okay, well, we need kind of like our version, but we're Hanna-Barbera. We can't go too crazy with it. So what are we gonna do? Well, it's just Two Stupid Dogs, and they're opposites. One's a little dark-skinned, one's big old kind of Beethoven looking, kind of sort of thing. And so Two Stupid Dogs is like whenever it was on, I was like, man, this looks appealing. I like this. That's pretty much all it was.
Okay, Jacob, you're number 30.
All right, my number 30. All right, moving on to Nickelodeon this time. Ironically enough, it's another dog-related one. In this case, it's CatDog.
Okay, mine's going to be pretty close to yours as far as ranking goes.
It's like, now keep in mind, like from the master list, a lot of these I was only vaguely familiar with, or a lot of them I hadn't even seen. But I did narrow it down to at least 35 that I had. And CatDog I definitely knew would not be in the top 10 or even the top 20, but I could definitely have seen it in the top 30. mainly because I do remember watching it when I was do remember seeing it when I was younger. Remember, so it is number 30, and let me put it to you this way: like, it's not something that really stuck out to me, but I do remember being intrigued by the whole conjoined cat dog thing. It's like I found the whole thing, and I do like the character designs. All the character designs are unique and appealing, and but I do remember. I don't exactly remember when I first watched it, but I think it was around the time I did. I might have even watched it like around the time, again, probably the early 2000s. I don't exactly remember when I first watched it, but I do remember something. Remember watching quite a few episodes, and the infamous one that kind of like was locked in my brain for years, but not remembering until I saw it, the toothbrush scene.
Oh my god! Don't get me started. Oh,
it's like I remember seeing that, and I remember seeing it's like, oh yeah, I watched that one when I was
it's
younger.
horrific.
Okay, when you say the toothbrush scene, to give context,
You know what he's talking about, Drake.
I know. Tiki, I know.
Okay,
what he's talking about. I meant the audience.
Okay, to put context into it, it's basically where Cat pulls himself through the body, through dog's mouth to brush his teeth.
Yes.
Oh my god!
It's like,
That whole episode is just warped.
I've been rewatching this show. This entire show is kind of surreal in some ways.
Oh yeah.
I mean, beyond just the initial premise of the cat and dog conjoined together.
There was an episode where he had to go inside dog to find a goldfish that cat swallowed. So he had to go through dog's mouth and basically go through the recesses of the infinite cat dog. It was crazy.
Oh god!
This entire show is a fever dream.
Yep.
Basically, it's like, is it wild enough? No, and then make it wilder.
Also, technically full of hate crimes.
Kind of, yeah.
That's a perfect segue into my number 30, if you don't mind, Jacob.
Well, actually, I was gonna say and notice.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Earlier was there's actually some staff from SpongeBob that worked on early episodes of this, which isn't surprising because a lot of them migrated from other Nickelodeon shows into SpongeBob. So it's again, not something I remember distinctly, but it's something that I do remember watching and remember finding entertaining.
Okay, so speaking of fever dreams, my number 30 is the definitive so bad it's good 90s cartoon. That's right, I'll shower you with coconut cream pies. It's Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the coconut cream pie one.
I'll shower you with coconut cream pies.
Yeah, go on.
I binged this 40 episodes of it over December, and it is it is so up my alley as far as so bad it's good. As a kid, I genuinely loved it because Donkey Kong Country might be my all-time favorite series of video games. And, back in the day, it was we didn't know any better. We didn't know how CGI animation was supposed to look. So it was hey, they have the basic design and character traits of the video game characters down. Except Funky's Jamaican for some reason. But then, the series itself, I mean, what is absolutely crazy about the series is just how off-kilter each and every episode's plot is. And, the best analogy I can make with it is it kind of reminds me of a show like Regular Show, where the whole point of a common Regular Show episode is that it starts out in a very mundane place, but then it kind of goes crazy as it goes along. And this show is like that, except it's not intentionally written to be like that. It just by its very nature, it's just every episode is just completely baffling with how the hell did we get here? What is going on? So yeah, definitely the so bad it's good pick of the series for me.
I mean, it's definitely one of those shows that hey, look, we have 3D. We're at least trying to make it look like the game does.
Honestly, for the night, it looks terrible now just because we know how CG is supposed to look. But at the time, I thought it was, I don't know, for a video game adaptation, there's honestly worse things because at least the characters are by and large how they're supposed to act. I mean, tell me that's not Cranky Kong, the way that Cranky acts in this series, tell me that's not how you generally imagine him acting in the game. It's, I don't know, I think it's pretty on point for the most part.
Aquatet does say, like, say what you will about the game, it has great music, and Ali B earlier said the music is banging sometimes.
Okay, Ellie B also says Bluster Kong is a better original character than Harley Quinn, and oh man, I know you're kidding, but that is some high talk right there.
Like,
Okay.
Dragon muted himself.
So with that in mind, let's get to number 29. Dragon?
Yes. Number 29, Angry Beavers.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting choice.
Yeah, so Angry Beavers, it's the '90s buddy duo. It's again there was a period in the '90s. Again, we'll get into this once we get to it. Ren and Stimpy was an unprecedented success, and I'm not saying this is specifically trying to be Ren and Stimpy, but it does feel like there was a mandate at Nickelodeon to we need more duos. So yeah, here this was kind of I think intended to be kind of like a throwback to kind of some other duos, kind of like a Rocky and Bullwinkle of sorts, where you have two opposites that are in this case are brothers. You have Norbert and Daggett, and you have Richard, kind of an early animated showcase for Richard Horvitz and Nick Bakay. Invader Zim and Salem the cat from Sabrina Teenage Witch. Which that was one of those early kind of catches. Wait a minute, I know that voice, but I just can't place it.
Right.
Oh my god, he's the freaking cat. But yeah, I mean, Angry Beavers here's the thing. Angry Beavers is one of those shows where it's I've seen most assumedly every episode just in watching it air constantly, and it's kind of I kind of put some of the comfort watches kind of towards the. Honestly, this first third of the list is kind of the comfort watch for the majority. The stuff that doesn't necessarily have either a lot of substance or the stuff that did not quite have the necessarily stay power, but it was still beloved.
Sure.
Where I'm not saying that everyone is exactly in that mold, but that's kind of the vibe they have a lot of this on my at least this section of the list where. I love the design work with Angry Beavers. I love the fact, it's these beavers have really kind of interesting looking designs, and they have this really cool, basically a bachelor pad that is a beaver dam. It's this really swanky place, but it's made entirely of wood and colored wood, and it looks really nice. Anyway, they have a very eclectic kind of group of supporting characters. You have kind of a funky, a funky bear that is a vegetarian. You got a little truck driver mouse. You got it's an odd assortment to say the least.
Now this is actually one of the ones that kind of made my 35-1 short list.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have seen it, but I didn't see enough of it to make a formative opinion on it.
I mean, long story short, it's it's basically it's Cool Brother and Slapstick Brother. You have the Cool Brother with Nick Bakay, and you have Richard Horvitz is Daggett basically getting hit all the time, and he's the misfortunate brother of the bunch. And yeah, I mean, again, there's just not a lot to it ultimately. But here's the thing. I can easily recall my favorite episode of Angry Beavers. So it is the episode in which they become pets, which again feels very kind of Ren and Stimpy-esque or Warner Brothers cartoon-esque, which obviously is Ren and Stimpy kind of pulls from ultimately. So it's the idea of hey, let's go to a pet store and we'll become pets, whatever that means. And these beavers have no idea what it means to be a pet, so they're getting kind of the bird's eye view of okay, this is the first person view, they're basically mistaken as platypus dogs or something, and they are. And it's ridiculous what happens, and they're taken in by this psychotic kind of nuclear family of sorts. And and then you have these fun episodes where Daggett they have kind of these superhero episodes where Daggett plays pretend, and he becomes muscular beaver, and it's Richard Horvitz just having a good time, just playing kind of a faux superhero, and Norbert he becomes kind of a supervillain. It's really kind of in the style of a Doctor Doom, and it's really funny. So, and one last thing to mention with Angry Beavers is, I don't know how many people know this, because Angry Beavers has kind of gone by the wayside over these years. Had really ambitious plans for how it was supposed to end. They were.
Oh, I've actually heard about this.
Yeah. Apparently, they were supposed to, unsatisfied with the cancellation, like most shows, they're you know what? Let's just kill them off. Okay, if you're gonna end the show, let's kill them off. Let's kill off the main characters, which apparently was a huge no-no in the '90s. Which I don't think we can. Yeah.
I thought it was more just like they were aware of the series ending or like pulling a joke or something.
Well, that's the thing. They weren't going to like die in a brutal fashion. It was just going to like, let's go to essentially, I think the way that was phrased is let's go to cartoon heaven, essentially. Let's go to like they probably get killed off in a cartoony fashion and ascend, I'd imagine.
But yeah, but they had Nickelodeon wanted to like, make reruns so kids didn't know the show's ending.
Exactly, which, it's, and again, it wasn't necessarily like a censorship thing. It's just more like a continuity thing, which, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense, but still, it's like, why cancel in the first place then? It's like, here's the thing. If things were made the way they were now, but in the age of streaming, every show would have an ending, where in the past, though, of course, again, because of syndication, you could not do that. So, yeah.
Like, and the interesting thing is, like, it was made by Mitch Schauer, who's famous for his work on Freakazoid.
Oh, yeah. We won't get to him for a while.
Yeah, yeah, I kind of anticipated that.
Yeah.
Okay, we have Slasher Fred, who says one of my favorite 90s cartoons was Tales from the Crypt Keeper, which was a spinoff of the HBO series. And yeah, I'm assuming that's probably going to fall under adult cartoons, which Shed's Dragon kind of said at the beginning. That was just sort of too broad of a spectrum to cover on this particular list. But I'm sure there's a bunch of them that we didn't that we just kind of like had to fall by the wayside because of that.
Well, I understand the cartoon was more family friendly than the actual HBO show was.
All right. Well, I apologize that we left it off the list then.
I mean, I've only ever heard it from James Rolfe. Anyway.
Okay, so yeah, Jacob, you're number 29.
All right, actually, this is probably gonna be brief. 101 Dalmatians the series.
Okay.
It's like I do remember watching this, like watching the reruns of this on Toon Disney.
I don't think I've ever seen an episode of it, honestly.
Really? Never? I mean,
no, I don't think so.
Not even the Cruella stuff?
No.
Like
I should. You would think, because I really like what they did with Cruella, and not 102 Dalmatians, but 101 Dalmatians 2, the animated sequel.
To be fair, that movie probably is better than the series. But I need to rewatch both just to make sure. But all in all, I can't really say much about this series. I did enjoy it quite a bit, and for a while, this probably would have been ranked on my 30s, but I did hold it. I remember holding it in higher regard than CatDog was. I just remember the adventures of the three dogs, and obviously Cruella and Jasper and Horace were as hilarious as they ever were. Of course, you have April Winchell doing Cruella DeVille,
which is great.
Yes, it is. Like, you can tell she loves to ham it up as much as possible. So it's like I said, can't really say much about this one. It's like I just really remember enjoying watching it. I like the reruns. I like the interaction with the characters. I like the chicken who thought she was a dog. Spot.
I've met that chicken.
Yep. Just like this, just one of those fond memories. Like, and a lot of times also this boils down to like remembering the theme song and how catchy they were. And that's not really related to this one, but it's definitely like a factor in CatDog. Like a lot of times I remember it's like, oh yeah, that had a cool theme song. But 101 Dalmatians, like, not much to say about 101 Dalmatians the series, but I do remember really enjoying it, and I even did watch a little bit of on Disney Plus a while ago, and yeah, I think it held up.
The 90s did have amazing openings.
Oh, yes, yeah, for sure.
Like I said, CatDog was like, the opening for CatDog is like one of the reasons why I remembered it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see, Slasher Fred's. You know what, Slasher Fred? I do vaguely remember a show about a kid with a magical baseball glove. I do vaguely remember this.
I thought that was like a movie. I thought that was like a movie or something.
No, it was a cartoon.
Huh. Okay.
It might have had live action segments in it. I don't know. I vaguely remember it. Okay, the only episode of it I've seen was their Christmas Carol episode, Dragon Christmas in July, possibly. We're running low on options. We're always looking.
All right, well, Dickie, yeah, let's do your number 29 unless you wanted to add some other comments here.
No, it's all good. Yeah, he's just saying how
April Winchell.
Yeah, she loves hamming it up as Clarabelle Cow.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so my number 29. This is it's actually pretty similar to your number 29, Jacob, as far as it's a spin-off of a movie, and I don't really remember a ton of it as far as individual episodes, but it definitely made an impact on me. And that's going to be Beetlejuice.
Huh.
And this actually, like, the biggest thing that I do have for this show is that it was a good enough standalone cartoon that I did watch it as a kid and I enjoyed it a lot, to the point where I remember it was like one of those big kind of like very memorable childhood moments when I saw the VHS of the live action Beetlejuice in the video store, and it blew my mind. I was like, oh my god, there's a live action version of this. And so yeah, I really do think the show does a very good job of recapturing kind of like the manic gothic energy of the movie. Obviously, Beetlejuice himself is not as, like, Beetlejuice is basically the villain of the movie, and he's definitely not that in the actual show. But I do think it's a great example of an adaptation. It's a really good case study for how you can actually do an adaptation and make it work. I feel like it's kind of like the inverse of something like the Little Shop cartoon, which was freaking terrible and did not work. This it took what it needed to from the movie, and it twisted it into a really nice, delightful little Halloween cartoon. I'm honestly surprised it's not a little bit more popular than it is, considering how popular the Wednesday Addams aesthetic is and the Broadway show and everything like that. So I would not be surprised to see it kind of, get a little bit more resurgence now, because the whole goth thing is back in style. All right. Let's see.
And if I remember correctly, like, this is something you mentioned that you watched before the movie, right?
Indeed. Yeah.
It's like it's kind of funny that I'm with that with a lot of these like so-called movie-based TV series, like especially like some of the ones later down the list and some of the other shows. Like, I was introduced to the series before the movie was. Like, even with 101 Dalmatians, I think I watched that before the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. Let's see, Slasher Fred. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen Dog City. I've certainly heard of it, but I have definitely heard of Bobby's World, and that, along with Life with Louie, I think were very much on the bubble of making it into the master list, right, Dragon?
Yeah, they were.
So I do really like Bobby's World. I like Life with Louie even more, though. Life with Louie, honestly, if it was on the master list, might have ended up in my 30 rank. Okay, so let's go ahead and loop back around, gentlemen. Let's get to number 28, Dragon.
Ren and Stimpy.
Okay.
Yeah, so Ren and Stimpy, it's both complicated and fascinating, this show, because again, this thing when it came out, this was a phenomenon for Nickelodeon. This, again, when Nickelodeon, when they first kind of premiered their animated shows, you had three premiering. Basically, like they premiere on the same day, if I recall. Like, their block essentially was, you had Rugrats, you had Doug, and you had Ren and Stimpy.
In order, I believe it was Doug, Rugrats, then Ren and Stimpy.
Okay. Point being, fact is, Ren and Stimpy really raised the bar. It kind of added an artistry to the gross out gag, if you will. And again, some of these aspects became staples of Nickelodeon for many shows. Or if we're going to do gross out here, we're going to become the network of the gross out. We're going to kind of add an artistry to it, And I mean, ultimately, you don't get shows like SpongeBob or Rocko's Modern Life, or just the innuendo you kind of sneak in the cartons. I know, yes, Rugrats did have some innuendo worked into it, but just for argument's sake, I don't think you have it widespread as it is without Ren and Stimpy making the impact that it did. It's again, this was kind of like Nickelodeon kind of doing a classic comedy duo, much like the comedy greats, your Laurel and Hardy's, your Abbott and Costello's, your kind of Three Stooges minus one guy, if you will. Given that one of our characters sounds like one of the Three Stooges, I think it's an appropriate reference.
It's basically Larry Fine meets Peter Lorre.
Pretty much.
When it comes to the voices.
Yeah. So that's the thing. And ultimately, this thing's like a nod to kind of the Bob Clampett era of the Looney Tunes. That's really that's kind of ultimately what you have going on here. And this thing. So honestly, Ren and Stimpy is. I think Ren and Stimpy's heyday was the first 2 seasons, because after John K. John K. was fired, it just kind of lost its edge, and they just kind of kept going. And I'm not saying that necessarily like the whole you gotta. The creator is pivotal. When the creator leaves, it all goes to crap. But honestly, it's just the fact that it kind of lost the oomph. It kind of lost the pushing the envelope nature of it. And of course, years later, we learned that's kind of maybe a bad thing. But still, it's like, taking the art for what it is. I mean, there are episodes in there I love from Ren and Stimpy. I mean, when I think Ren and Stimpy, I'm thinking of, obviously, I think a lot of us are thinking about, Stimpy's son. But for me, of course, one of the benchmarks of Ren and Stimpy is Stimpy's invention. It's like a masterpiece of kind of the psychodrama cartoon, if you will. It's we have also examples of that with like Space Madness, and for me, one of my childhood favorites was the cat who laid the golden hairballs, which basically turned to kind of like Stimpy. Basically, the idea, like in the stock market of the day, a cat's hairball was worth as much as gold. So they basically turned Stimpy into kind of like a money printing machine. It was really funny, gross, but again, we kind of apply an artistry to the gross out gag, which again, given how low a tolerance I have for it these days, there shows you back then there was a style applied to it. Also, the rubber nipple salesman. Something just really still funny about the rubber nipple salesman, all the possible practical uses and alternative uses of the rubber baby bottle nipples just is so.
Even though that was probably just an excuse for them to get to say nipples on television.
Exactly. No, that is absolutely what that was, Jacob. Yes.
Isn't it also the one where with Mr. Horse and the Walrus going, "Call the police"?
Yep, that's the one and the very same. Yes. And also, we should mention some of the offshoot characters. One in particular, Tiki and I enjoy very much so. Powdered Toast Man, which some of our associates have gone rather far with. In a good way. So that's the thing. I mean, and also with Ren and Stimpy, I should mention we're not factoring the adult party cartoon era, which was just
no.
It was a dumpster fire, man. You don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But classic Ren and Stimpy, particularly those first 2 seasons, which ultimately is why I can't put it that high on the list. It's those first 2 seasons, man. I love it.
Okay, Jacob, 28.
If you notice, I was talking about some movie-based ones before. Hercules. The animated series.
All right.
It's like I believe this is one of the ones I actually did watch long before the actual series itself. Like I said, I might have been vaguely aware it was based on a movie, but like I said, I was more familiar with the actual series before I actually watched the movie itself, because I don't think I watched the movie till I was like in middle school or something, and there was like a rainy day or something.
It was one of those Disney movies I got to pretty late too.
Obviously I do like the movie. The movie's very enjoyable, but the series itself, I actually did almost do a full rewatch of it on Disney Plus. And I do think it holds up. It's like a lot of the comedy holds up. It's some of the school-related stuff is relatable, and it even has hand waves some of the Greek mythology stuff. It justifies it almost like tries to justify like all the stuff the original movie got wrong in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty interesting. So plus you got James Woods returning as Hades and Tate Donovan coming back as Hercules. So that's always a blast. And unfortunately, they couldn't get Danny DeVito for.
They did get the next best thing though.
Robert Costanzo, yeah.
Yeah.
So they did get someone who sounds exactly like him. So it's basically the next best thing. It's like, of course I remember. Of course, Icarus and Cassandra, his 2 best friends, they were added a lot of humor and different styles of comedy to the show.
I think Icarus was French steward. Is that right?
Yeah, he was.
That's what I thought.
It's like I don't know much. I don't know him pretty much anywhere else, but that is one of the things I do remember and do know him from. That and Inspector Gadget too, but that's beside the point.
Also, there was the crossover, Jacob. You should tell the kids about the crossover.
Yeah, I was getting to that, Dragon.
Sorry.
Plus, it's the only instance we ever have of so far in Disney Plus of Aladdin being in its television series, because for some reason the Aladdin series has not been added to Disney Plus yet. But somewhere like in the later episodes, Aladdin did in fact cross over with Hercules, where Jafar was brought back to life by Hades. I mean, all in all, it was the show itself was a lot of fun. Like obviously having Aladdin and Hercules interact with each other was quite a bit of fun. And like I said, for some reason the Aladdin series is not on Disney Plus yet, so that's the closest you kind of get to that. But it is kind of fun. It is, but since Hercules is on there, I mean, I definitely say give it a watch.
Yeah, that's freaking weird that Aladdin's not on there because that was like one of the more iconic Disney cartoons.
It's definitely on my list.
Okay, my number 28. This is going to go by fast since we've already talked about it. It's CatDog. I honestly feel like the gross out humor and kind of like the cringe factor, especially with that freaking teeth episode. It's a little too much for me these days.
It's not like they did it all the time. All right, they did it like those two instances with the fish and with the dentist office.
I mean, to be fair though, the show did have a lot of surreal humor in it.
It did. I'm just saying those like two extreme examples, though.
I feel like the show, like it's a very interesting cornerstone of Nickelodeon because I feel like it's very much kind of the most mean-spirited of all the Nickelodeon shows. And what I mean by that is like it very much is like I mean, by all intents and purposes, the whole world is pretty much out to get CatDog. Like even Winslow is kind of like a little huckster.
Oh yeah.
So
to be fair, there was like Peter Hannon's intention, like the worst of both of their worlds, essentially.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's the Greaser Dogs. There's hate crimes every week on that show.
Right. So honestly, this is one of those episodes. This is one of those series. I don't really have a ton to say about it that Jacob didn't already say. It's mostly just on there for. It's certainly iconic. It's certainly one of the more, one of the bigger cornerstones of the late '90s Nickelodeon output. But it's not necessarily something I'm going to be going back to a ton. But definitely has its place.
Yeah.
Okay. Slasher Fred, of course we remember MTV. Unfortunately, MTV, and like I said, kind of all the MTV stuff kind of falls under the adult animation category, or else there would definitely be some MTV stuff we'd put on there, but adult animation just kind of opened up too much of a...
it would have had like Beavis. It would have like Beavis and Butthead, Brothers Grunt, and probably when was Eon Flux?
Eon Flux was that was another one that was actually spun off of Liquid Television.
Well, that's why we didn't put Duckman on there.
No, I mean that's what I'm saying. There's like a whole like we can basically do like an entire like ranking podcast just on adult cartoons from the 90s practically.
Yeah,
at least the top 20.
Like when was Eon Flux in the 90s or was that the 2000s?
I believe it was the 90s.
Like I haven't seen it, but I have heard a lot about it. So.
All
right, Dragon, you're number 27.
Beetlejuice.
Okay.
So obviously this won't go by pretty quick. Just my, similar to the animated series was my introduction to Beetlejuice. Had a great opening. It was the Beetlejuice. In this show, he's far more, kind of the prankster / anti-hero. I guess you'd kind of call him more prankster than kind of a mischief maker than anything. Instead of being the villain that he was in the Beetlejuice movie, or at least kind of the force to be reckoned with in the Beetlejuice movie. There's honestly, it's very much kind of like a genie quality to Beetlejuice, mainly with the shape shifting and basically to sell every pun that he makes. You get to explore the Neither world, which was not like the movie at all, and that's what I'm saying. So the movie was quite the man. This is like when I'm watching that Beetlejuice movie, I'm thinking, who's Alec Baldwin? Who are these people? What am I? I thought Lydia was supposed to be friends with this guy. What's going on? This marriage? Who wrote this? As a kid, and of course, you realize, oh man, this is actually pretty good. Just a little different,
I had the exact kind of reaction to it. I was like, this is all wrong.
Yeah. Well, isn't that cute? But it's wrong.
Kind of like the anti-Super Mario Brothers movie. It's like the movie itself was the accurate Tark version.
Yeah. So, look, I found Beetlejuice entertaining, and I think on the rewatch, there's still laughs to be had. I don't think it... I remember catching this on TV during kind of the, presumably the re-airings on Cartoon Network. I have to assume, honestly, pretty much a lot of my 90s, some of my best 90s nostalgic memories and shows are kind of reruns, technically, on Cartoon Network, I think, ultimately, but I could be wrong. So Beetlejuice, though, I think it does have some state power. I think it has state power in the fact of, like, with the movie's popularity, especially in kind of, as Tiki saying, kind of with the goth culture coming back in the fray. I mean, you walk into a Hot Topic. I mean, like, the two products you'll always see are going to be Nightmare Before Christmas and Beetlejuice. They're always going to be there. And with that, I feel I feel like the animated series. I've seen some animated series merchandise now and again, like in a Hot Topic. So it's like, well, there you go. I think it's on the rise.
I would wear an animated Beetlejuice shirt. I could see myself rocking that.
Too. I mean, it's pretty cool, right? I mean, that's the Beetlejuice's look was rather fun, and obviously, this is kind of stuff that kind of, I think, led to the middle ground that is the Beetlejuice's rock and roll review. Is that what it's called?
Beetlejuice's Rockin' Graveyard Review, I believe, is the official name.
Graveyard. I keep forgetting that. Yes. Yeah.
All right. Jacob.
Right, number 27. Look at me. I don't know how many of you are going to react to that. Arthur.
Hey, what a wonderful time of day.
Yes.
Someone break out the steel drums. No, not the regular drums. I said the steel drums, darn it. Kick those over.
Again, yeah. Again, that's probably...
It's the cornerstone of elementary school 90s culture, I feel.
Yeah, it's like Arthur was definitely an interesting show to me. It's definitely kind of an interesting show for me. Like, I don't remember as much as some of the other educational shows I've watched in my life, which is why it's not very high on this list in the first place. But I obviously can't deny the influence it's had, and I do remember like majority of all of the characters, like obviously Arthur, Buster, obviously DW, which obviously made me glad I didn't have a younger sister. To be honest. Sorry, I don't know if that comes across as anything because I never really cared for DW.
No, DW is very, very culturally relevant as far as that goes. Yeah,
I didn't care for DW myself either, so you're not alone.
I mean, like I said, she's just a little kid. I mean, so I can't really hold it against her too much. But
I can.
All right, well, there you go.
She was like the female Caillou before Caillou.
But yeah, so it's like you're always in the things like going, "Hey!" Yeah, but yeah, I can't really say much about this. I mean, like I do remember the theme song. I remember some of I remember a majority of the characters. Like and you can tell, like my memories are fuzzy on this because it's actually kind of hard to watch Arthur nowadays. But like especially because funny thing is, it actually just ended last year.
Yep, last year. Yeah, with 25 seasons.
Like this, so Arthur finally ended after all this time, and it's almost as old as I am.
I know. Don't remind us.
But like I said, I can't really say I remember much about it, but I do remember having fond memories watching it. I think like obviously the theme song is obviously like probably one of the greatest of the educational variety. Then I said I mainly remember more of the characters and their interactions more than some of the actual shows itself. Which is the characters. Sometimes it's just the characters themselves that really elevated these things and make me remember them more than the actual stuff they did. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it's like yeah. So basically,
it's kind of like the Peanuts in that regard.
Yeah, it did feel like PBS's answer to the Peanuts. Yeah.
Yeah, in a way, it's like, and I don't really have much more to say about Arthur, but it is kind of weird to see this thing end. I didn't even know it was going all this time until it's like, hey, Arthur's ending. I'm like, wait, that didn't end already? but yeah, I mean, like, that's basically all I have to say about it. Is like,
were viewers like you still sponsoring it, or were we still?
I more sponsored Nova than anything else. Like PBS Nova was like the bomb though.
Like Affleck and Phantoms.
Sure.
Okay, so my number 27 is going to be Darkwing Duck.
All right.
And I feel like this is one of those shows where I have more nostalgia for it. I love the concept of it. I do really like the execution. Obviously, I feel like Christine Kavanagh is kind of like the big MVP of the show. Jim Cummings is also great too. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like Gosling is one of the all-time great kid characters in animation. Like, like she made kid characters kind of cool before they got annoying after a while. So she was a really great kind of prototype in that regard. Unfortunately, Darkwing Duck, it's one of those things where I tried to go back and watch it as an adult, and it's charming, but I feel like I don't know. I don't quite get that same sort of spark watching as an adult. And I feel like that's, I wish I liked it more. I don't know. There's just something about the pacing of it that just is not, it's really good, but so basically what I'm saying is I'm kind of ranking it more for, sort of its iconic nature. Obviously, it's got a big place in pop culture, and the DuckTales reboot and all of that. It's one that I've tried to go back to, but I don't necessarily think that the episodes hold up all that well, and so that's why it's not like I expected this to be a lot higher. But when I'm just thinking about it, I don't know. I don't really have a good reason why the episodes don't hold up all that well, except maybe just pacing, I guess. Hopefully that reboot's still happening, Z and K. Hopefully.
Did they ever announce that officially it was happening?
I mean, they did, like they said it was in production. They didn't, and they haven't announced anything beyond that. Like they announced that like Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg were working on it, and that Ted Stones was working as a consultant on it.
Huh.
So I'm saying like they're at least like it's seriously in development. They just like haven't announced, like shown or like announced anything beyond that.
Uh-huh. All right. So yeah, we could go ahead and move on from there. Number 26 for you, Jacob. Dragon. I'm sorry.
Better. Thank you. All right. The Magic School Bus.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was the Magic School Bus was more the it was kind of the home video or kind of like the shonen school experience for me. It was very much like I remember they showed kind of a whole bunch of the Magic School Bus episodes in school growing up. Of course, Magic School Bus premiere scholastic show, of course, from the Scholastic Book Fair that Tiki and I are so very fond of.
Hey, I had the Scholastic Book Fair too.
All right, fine. That all three of us were very familiar with. And yeah, I mean, it's very educational. It's very fun, and of course, had a wonderful opening. It's covered, various subjects of study. For me, I always love that school bus design. Man, I love the fact it put the face on the bus and it could emote, but it never really spoke. At least to my knowledge, I don't think it ever spoke.
No, it never spoke.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. Like, man, you want it to speak, but it's not. It would not have a voice. Ergo, does not speak.
Silent bus.
Yes, silent bus. Let's forget the prom bus. Let's put Kevin Smith on that bus. He'll learn a little.
Forget the cat bus.
Okay. Anyway,
My Neighbor Totoro.
Yes.
Well, yeah. So, I love the school bus. I love the malleability of it and all the things it transformed into. Of course, Miss Frizzle, awesome animated teacher for the ages, pretty much Willy Wonka with a teaching degree, I assume. Yeah, I mean, they had all sorts of guest stars in there. Of course, I mean, Lily Tomlin herself was Miss Frizzle. There's a lot there. I mean, for me, probably the most remembered episode for me from the Magic School Bus was the weather episode, the one where they learned how the weather worked. That was a good one.
Oh, yeah.
And, of course, the one that kind of slightly traumatized me as a kid, like Tiki with the weird bat episode, is Ralphie sick? When Ralphie basically it was kind of like it was like one of those. I'm blanking on the original
Fantastic Voyage.
Thank you. Very kind of a takeoff on Fantastic Voyage when they go inside Ralphie.
I hate it. I genuinely hate it.
The episode or the episode?
The episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, again, it's more of like I think as a kid, I had more of a tolerance to, but then the headiness kind of got in there as I grew up, and it's like, oh god, no, I can't do that again. I can't. Folks, I can't watch Ozzy and Drix again. I can't do it.
Same.
Loved it as a kid. Can't do it now.
Jones.
I can't do it now.
All right.
Anyway, yes, Miss Frizzle is the teacher. we all wanted to have. And yeah, oddly, this guy, I completely forgot about this. Yeah, it got a Netflix revival, which did not seem as good. I mean, it seemed like, hey, let's get
No.
Miss Frizzle has a younger sister, and it's Kate McKinnon. Yes.
So go on. Sorry, wait. Finish
As
first.
Kate McKinnon. To go on now.
And obviously, it has to be said, considering the show was made in the '90s. Like, obviously, some of the scientific topics they talked about back then have sometimes you know more about them now than we did back then. Sometimes it might seem a bit outdated by today's standards.
Well, how much do you think so? Because I know obviously the solar system thing's probably, depending on who you ask, it's gonna be outdated with the whole Pluto thing. But anything else? Like what else is kind of
like I said, I don't know. I can't know anything specifically, but they're considering like how many topics they broached and how much science has changed in the last 30 years. It's bound to happen.
Yeah. You know, this is going to sound really silly. I just want to bring up one. Again, I have not watched the new series. For all, the Netflix series was good, just given how great Carmen Sandiego was. But there's one little difference. If you look at the opening of the new Magic School Bus to the original, which they use the same song and everything, but it's like new visuals. So let me very small detail. Okay, famous. One of the great parts of the Magic School Bus opening is you get baked into a pie, and they fly a little pie, and you have like the chef in like the pink shirt and the big old poofy chef's hat, and he faints. You remember that? Lovely. You know what the pie is in the new show?
Oh God!
Just some lady eating a piece of pie. Just some lady. No, you didn't. She didn't get baked into a pie, like freshly baked into a pie, like a death trap. No, just a lady eating a pie. No stakes.
I mean, I remember that was the episode that talked about kitchen chemistry.
Yes.
I know that it was just a lady eating a pie.
Now it's just a lady eating a pie. Where's the molecular gastronomy? I ask you, where is it? Anyway,
that's actually one of the things that made that's. I mean, like, I'll have my own stuff to say about this show later myself, but
go on. Sorry.
Later myself, but I was like, this show kind of made me interested in the books, and like I was into science a lot at that point, and like I said, it made me like interested in like cooking, space, dinosaurs, and all that stuff.
Speaking of the baker, Z&K reminds us of all the guest stars who voiced the baker. I mean, they had a lot of guest stars. They had Ed Asner was on an episode of Magic School Bus as well, and you have Dom DeLuise was the baker.
Ooh.
Yeah, Dommy boy.
It's amazing how many of these famous actors you see in educational shows.
Oh yeah, I mean Ed Asner got around too because he was in this. Of course, he was in Captain Planet, which was mentioned earlier, which I would have liked to put on here, but again, only 30 spots. I had to pick and choose. And let's face it, Captain Planet has its charm, but a very antiquated charm, unfortunately.
If we're talking about talking about educational stuff from the 2000s, I think Cyber Chase would have been on my list.
Well, yeah, the 2000s, but yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I guess it's time for my number 26.
Yeah, number 26. What do you got, buddy boy?
Well, that's actually what we talked about for Ren and Stimpy.
Okay.
Again, this is one I didn't catch until like years later, like many years later, like when it was when they put it on Netflix for the first time. Back when like Netflix was had almost everything you could ask for.
Yeah, but now it's like they're battling over who gets what.
Basically, yes, but I do remember, but I did watch Ren and Stimpy. I do remember watching it. And as you said, Dragon, a lot of the first two seasons were great. Obviously, I haven't seen any of the adult party stuff, and I have no desire to see any of the old adult party stuff. And then, obviously, I liked it as a throwback to the zanier side of the Looney Tunes, and of course, probably amped up to a certain degree because you can. I mean, you know how much John K. looked up to Bob Clampett. Bob Clampett, basically he worshipped the ground Bob Clampett walked on, pretty much. And you can definitely see the blueprints here. It's obviously the nipple episode. I remember that one. See, Royal Kilted Canadian Yaxman. That was an interesting one. Obviously Space Madness, but I think the one that sticks out to me was Sven Hoek.
Ah, yes, and the Don't Whiz on the Electric Fence episode.
We're basically
Don't you whiz on the electric fence.
They're basically where Ren's cousin, who basically is a dog version of Stimpy, comes over and they both drive Ren nuts. And And basically, the entire ending of the episode is like basically Ren just delving into madness and talking about how he would torture both of them.
He goes the full Dahmer on him. No, literally, they pulled from Jeffrey Dahmer for that scene. They went
like, I will tear your eyes out of their sockets. And I think another one that I remember was like, wait, I just lost it. It's a Spin Ho. Let's see, Spin Hoig. Happy Happy Joy Joy.
Yes, that's Stimpy's invention. Yeah.
Oh right, yeah, that's another episode I remember because another one basically you can count like the episodes where Ren doesn't get driven insane on one hand. So basically, I don't have much more to say beyond what you've already said regarding Ren and Stimpy Dragons. Like I do remember it like more fondly than the other stuff I've mentioned so far, but not high enough to be placed further on.
All right. Tiki.
All right, my number 26 is going to be Johnny Bravo. Might be a little controversial, might be a little low. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a situation where, like, when I look back on the show, there's definitely some. I think Johnny Bravo absolutely thrived in the crossover world. Like, the Don Osmond episode, the Q episode.
Bravo Doobie Doo. I love that one.
Let's see, what others were there, Dragon?
Adam West, who's when he met Adam West. Then you had, again, so you mentioned Oz, you mentioned Adam West, Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah, so that is where I feel like Johnny Bravo really thrived, was when they got really creative with the format, and there is a lot of iconic humor in there. Unfortunately, I feel like I'm not even saying this as far as like culturally it doesn't hold up. I mean, honestly, culturally it kind of doesn't hold up. It's kind
of he never got the girl.
Actually, it holds up really well considering it says how not to.
No,
act.
You're right.
He's a walking sexual harassment lesson gone right.
He is. I guess my main problem with it is that when you look at it from an episode by episode basis, it does get pretty damn repetitive. It really does.
Now, to be fair, as do a lot of 90s shows, though. Like with any cartoon, really.
I get that. I get that. But, it's kind of like one of those things where, for me, like outside of the crossover episodes, I don't really think a lot of the other episodes really stand out. But it is a really good, like, I love the vibes of the show. I love kind of like the Archie's comics style side characters like Pops and Carl. I feel like they are very, they add a lot of color. Bunny Bravo, one of the great cartoon moms.
Yeah.
So yeah, at the end of the day, I really do feel like it's just kind of an issue of, it's a premise that it's an interesting, like, as far as like, if you look at it from the lens of what not to do, sure. But it's still, I don't necessarily think there's a ton of variety to it, and I don't necessarily think I can, I don't know, I don't think it holds up as well as I want it to. It's another one of those, but like I said, I do think that unlike something like, like Darkwing, where I kind of respect it more for the premise, some of these episodes do really stand out, and I feel like a theme of my list is not for every single entry, but kind of as a general rule, is as we go forward, more episodes are going to stand out. So,
plus it's kind of interesting to see like how many like future creators got their start working on shows like this, like Butch Hartman and Seth MacFarlane especially made their names working on Johnny Bravo.
Sure.
As Z and K points out too, Seth MacFarlane worked on one of the best episodes of John Bravo, which is the Adam West and Schoolhouse Rock episode.
It's like I remember rewatching some of the episodes a while ago and like seeing like directed by Seth MacFarlane. I was like, wait a minute.
Oh yeah, had to start somewhere. Oh yeah.
I mean, I know, but I didn't expect him to start at Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah.
Which is pretty nice. I mean, that explains why he was selected to work on the failed reboot of the Flintstones.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay, number 25, Dragon.
Arthur.
All right.
Yes. So, despite all the characters being anthropomorphic animals, there's something just so darn human about this about the kids' experience in this show. I mean, there's just something so honest and so well represented in this. Where I mean, think about this. With so many shows, I'm not saying there aren't exceptions to this, but so many animated shows in the '90s, the cartoons were broad or exciting or action based, but never authentic, never like true, like down to earth, like kind of slice of life authentic, and just kind of really captured, like the human experience. And it was just something refreshing about that in Arthur. Plus, again, this being a PBS show, there wasn't really an agenda or like a marketing dynamic or like hey, no, push this or do these types of stories. It's like, let's just tell honest stories. Now, mind you, a lot of these were adapting the book, so there's definitely kind of a basis there. But if I remember, I think it was kind of like in tandem at a certain point with the book. So at a certain point, they ran out of books and they kind of did their own stuff. But and again, also again, kind of like in good company with the Magic School Bus, it was kind of the Scholastic years, if you will. It was very much kind of the like, here's the again, very much the Scholastic book fair, just kind of given breath through animation. I really feel the humanity of Arthur was probably best on display in the Mr. Rogers crossover, which was epic, man. That was huge. And it's still one of my favorite episodes of Arthur. Just seeing Mr. Rogers, show up in animation the way he did and just have an honest conversation about like they weren't like touting him up. And I love the whole episode was about Arthur's fear that he'd be perceived as a child with Mr. Rogers there, who was such an icon of childhood. And he had a really adult conversation with Arthur, which is great. And again, as we kind of spoke earlier about it, Arthur ultimately, looking back on it, especially in kind of the early years, it was very much PBS's stab at kind of the Charles Schultz Peanuts sort of thing. Only they had more time with the characters. As much as we love the Peanuts, when you look at it, we read into the Peanuts a lot because we have no choice because they're comic strip characters. Again, they're kind of they're fated to be the same way every entry. Okay, they can't really, they're not really allowed to change. And the closest we ever got to change was that the Peanuts movie and the Blue Sky. That was the closest we ever did. Where there were a lot of impressive entries in Arthur. I think to me, the one that really struck a chord with me always, that really impressed me was April. It's an episode called April 9th. I encourage everyone to look this up because April 9th was their response to 9/11. And there was an element of subtlety in the early seasons of Arthur that I really appreciate, where it's like, okay, so we're not really set in New York, so we can't really do that story. So what can we do? Let's do something that encapsulates not just something directly correlated to 9/11, but something correlated to children dealing with trauma and dealing with a real world thing that could happen, a dangerous situation that could happen anywhere. Where, okay, there's a fire in the school, and we track our characters' kind of reaction to this in various different ways. And it was just very impressive the way they told this story. And again, there's so many other examples I could pull. I think we're unanimous on no one really cared for DW much. I don't think anyone did. Except for the little girls that probably were DW. That's about it. But yeah, unfortunately, I feel the reason Arthur is not higher on this list for me, as much as I love it, I have a true, I'm delved into nostalgia on this thing. It's in my DNA, man. Arthur means a tremendous deal to me. But unfortunately, I feel that Arthur's fault that was unavoidable is that it has an audience that is slated to grow up. It does not necessarily have kind of like something that's kind of directed towards, I don't know. There's not. It's kind of hard to say a nostalgia basis. The nostalgia basis is very much directly rooted to childhood here, where it's like the audience grows up and it's going to be hard to kind of get into, and because of that, people forgot about it because they grew out of it. Where it's now the '90s shows you can rewatch, like, oh, isn't this is still funny? I can still rewatch this and at least get memes out of it, like you can today. Where I think now people have turned Arthur bits into memes, technically, but I don't know. It just felt like, I think it became a bygone era for many people. I assume like ourselves for many years, where again, like Jacob said, you didn't know it was on for 25 seasons. Neither did I, because we all, at a certain point, we dropped off of it. For me, before I found out about like the finale, I was like checking through it one day and was like, huh, so I wonder every time I see Arthur, it's like, oh yeah, Arthur, I have fond memories of that. And I checked in on it. And of course, like after like 15 or so seasons, like PBS ran out of money, so they were on Flash animations. Like, oh, that's a shame. So it was not a good omen. But I'll tell you, man, watching that last episode, it ended darn well. It ended better than I think most shows would give it. So I think they cared about Arthur. From what I understand, they still held true to the themes of the show, just a little less subtle than they were in the early days. But yeah.
And the final episode brought back Arthur's original voice actor too.
I know, which is really impressive. And Z and K says, there's times when Buster's life as a child of divorce is mentioned, which we saw that, and George, of course, George had a lot of wonderful topics delving dyslexia and autism, and I believe it was like one of the first times in animation they had an autistic character represented with this friend that he made for an episode, Francine being Jewish, and like during the holiday episode we explored like all the different holidays, like what the Swedes do for Christmas, the Kwanzaa, and we had the Hanukkah and the whole shebang. So again, Arthur covered a lot of ground, man. That is something to be really impressed by, I feel.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. What do you got?
My pick is for 25 is definitely different than yours. It's Goof Troop.
Okay, I'm glad someone had it on their top 30. I couldn't quite find room for it.
And it's like I said, remember, I narrowed it down to 35 of the ones I'd actually seen.
Uh-huh.
But of course, with Goof Troop, as you know, this is where we first met Max Goof, Goofy's young son. I think we all remember him fondly and probably better from the Goofy movie.
Yep.
Yeah, Goofy movie really overshadows this show.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I agree with you, and I'd obviously rather watch that movie again than watch this. But that's not to say this show is bad, or I don't have fond memories watching it. Of course, I always remember. Of course, the movie does share continuity with this show anyway. So it's like they're kind of like hand in hand anyway. Like, of course, they have like basically the dynamic of Pete and Goofy being like the neighbor, the Goofy fun-loving neighbor and the neighbor who despises his guts, but Goofy thinks he's friends with them anyway. It's like, of course, you have Pete's wife, and then his daughter. Like, it's just kind of amazing that Pete even has kids in the first place. Like, and of course, PJ. Can't go wrong with old PJ there. And I haven't played the game. Have you played? Did you ever play the SNES game, Tiki?
No, can't say that I played Goof Troop. No.
Like, neither have I, but it actually features one of the earliest design works of Shinji Mikami, later famous for co-creating the Resident Evil games.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
Because it was done for.
I mean, Capcom did make a lot of really damn good Disney games. That's for sure. Yeah,
man, this was actually among them. A lot of people actually finally remember the SNES game. Like I said, I'm not one of them because I never played it, but I do see a lot of people.
Aladdin SNES was the big one for me.
Yeah, like there's like Aladdin on the SNES and like two Virgin ones, and two ones were like the Sega Genesis, I believe. Either that or was two for the SNES. I have no idea. But again, I'm not gonna have a lot to say about these earlier ones on my list, unfortunately, except maybe like some of the few next ones on here. But I still remember Goof Troop fondly. Like I said, obviously not as fondly as I remember a Goofy movie. Actually, I think I did watch the movie. I might have actually watched the movie before I watched this, in all honesty. And a reversal of how it usually worked for me.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's a lot of people's case.
As I mentioned before, it's probably a reversal of how I usually came across this stuff. But for some reason, the episode I remember the most is the smog episode, like the pollution one. Like I said, I don't really even know anything about it, but I do remember a moral about pollution and all that. Because morals and all that, but there were it's obviously a product of the '90s and probably doesn't. And I can still look back at the '90s. Maybe it's not as good as it once was, but I still have fond memories watching it when I was a kid. I remember it was like, hey, yeah, that's funny. I remember all that. And of course, like I said, we have to mention it somewhere for it leading to obviously one of the best non-WDAS animated movies Disney has with the Goofy movie, a movie that we all remember fondly.
Yeah, I want to point out Jim Cummings and Rob Paulsen, just a great 1-2 punch.
Oh yeah,
of voice actors in that show.
Oh yeah, it's like Jim Cummings and with Rob voicing his son. And they actually did keep him. They actually did keep him for the movie too, which he just basically lowered his voice for PJ. So like I said, of course. So yeah. And so I think Pete was probably the main reason why a lot of people liked the show in the first place. In all honesty.
Okay, Z and K says I remember seeing the movie first, then Once Upon a Christmas. And then Extremely, then Bits of Troop. I was so confused as to how and why Max kept changing H's every year.
Yeah.
This was before the concept of continuity was put into my brain.
And I think
I mean,
Brian,
in a weird way, the way that they did that was one of the earliest examples of like really strong cartoon continuity.
Then you have House of Mouse in there too.
And Brian Nussbaum put it best.
Rob Paulson ruled the 90s. Indeed.
Yep.
His name is actually spelled with an E with Paul Sen. But
Don't critique his grammar.
I'm
Spelling,
just,
I mean, don't, yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying.
All right.
Technically, it is spelled P-A-U-L-S.
All right.
Okay.
You're 25.
My number 25, I'm pretty much going to plead the fifth here because you guys have pretty much said everything there is to say about it. Ren and Stimpy.
You weenie.
No, it's great. It's great. I mean, I think the whole concept of basically like elevating the crude humor and finding the artistry in that, the send up to the Warner Brothers cartoons of it all, the kind of just being this sort of like game changer. I definitely don't think that it, of course there is that whole issue of John Kay just being a very, very icky person just in general that sort of casts a shadow over this show in a way. But
sometimes it's good to separate the art from the artist.
No, absolutely.
It's animation inked with blood.
I feel like I can do that.
It's inked with blood, but it still looks darn impressive.
It does. So yeah, I really feel like you guys pretty much covered everything. There's go watch that super intense Howard Stern interview if you haven't yet.
Or better yet, watch Happy Happy Joy Joy, the Ren and Stimpy story.
Yeah, that too. Okay, we move on to number 24, Dragon.
Cow and Chicken.
Cow and Chicken. Oh man, this is going to be higher on my list.
It's not on my list, unfortunately.
That's fair.
All right, so Cow and Chicken. Honestly, what boils down to Cow and Chicken is like the impressive Charlie Adler showcase hour. Well, more like half hour, but you see my points. It's the Charlie Adler show, pretty much. It's like him playing three lead roles, and it's hysterical.
The best Charlie Adler like red guy role that I vividly remember is when he played the King and Queen of Cheese.
Oh, the red guy is just so. Here's we're gonna.
The red guy is perfect.
I love the red guy.
We'll get into this with CatDog once I get to it at some point. Red Guy and Rancid Rabbit had kind of a similar thing where it's a nod to Abbott and Costello, where Abbott and Costello you had I'm sure other kind of vaudevillian stuff did this too, but probably maybe the Three Stooges. Let's just say Abbott and Costello, I knew for a fact they did this thing where they have their landlord who was the same actor who played everyone. So the idea is you have kind of your main antagonistic sort of character always playing like this role of authority, or kind of this role of authority, or kind of like the bad guy in every situation, but wearing like a wig or something. So basically be very clearly him, but he'd be slightly different, or be the red guy with a different name or something. And so apparently, so Cow and Chicken, if I understand this right, was done by kind of a journeyman in the animation industry. David Feiss has pretty much been involved in everything in either a storyboarding capacity or an animation capacity or some such stuff. He's still working up to everything. I'm saying Cow and Chicken was kind of his baby. That was kind of the reward of here's what I can do, guys. And my God, it's like the mantra of Cartoon Network is, okay, let's take an absurd concept and turn to a cartoon where so you're gonna have a cow and a chicken. They're going to be siblings. The parents, there's going to be a pair of legs. And we're going to have Satan in there, who's going to have a very pronounced...
just a pair of legs. We've seen the tops of them.
Yeah, literally just... I think that was a dream, but yes, you're right. There's going to be a pair of legs, essentially. And then we're going to have Satan in the show, but he's going to have a very pronounced rear end.
And not only that, he's going to bounce around on it.
Yes, and they're going to eat pork butts.
Yes, they're going to eat just literal asses.
Yes, they're going to eat pork butts. I'm saying, if you told anyone to the show, you'd be chucked into a rubber room in like 3 seconds. Oh man! Okay, he's lost it. He's gone bye. Put him in the room.
The show is definitely one of the more insane from that era of Cartoon Network, and that's saying something.
Yeah,
Oh,
and this is, then of course the reason for this came from one of the most ingenious things. And folks, we did not put this on the list because again, this one's kind of like the kind of the testing ground for a lot of stuff. It's kind of it could be unfair. You have what are cartoons? What are cartoons like? Oh yeah, cartoons. Basically, you had kind of these animation showcases, which were like it's like pilot season for animation, where they kind of test the waters. Like, hey, here's kind of a brief cartoon. It's kind of a taste of what you could get as a show. And sometimes you vote on, sometimes the networks just choose. And Bob's your uncle. That's how you get cow and chicken.
Unfortunately, no, they don't really do stuff like that anymore.
Yeah, that is a real shame because nowadays we have YouTube, which kind of is
YouTube is basically like the animation pilots.
But that's the thing, though. The shame is you don't quite have the promise of like this is going to happen that you had back then that you do on YouTube. Is like maybe I'll get noticed, or now it's like, or now it's back then it was like, okay, well, here's folks, either you are going to pick this or we the network executives are going to pick a show from this based on what you respond. That was really cool. We don't do that.
They're actually cool. Yeah, quite a few shows did get their starts like obviously this Courage the Cowardly Dog, Codename Kids Next Door, even Megas XLR was part of this.
Oh, I'm well aware of that one. Yes, I would have loved to have put Megas XLR on this, kids, but 2000s. Anyways, also this we had a spinoff from Cow and Chicken with I Am Weasel,
which also featured the red guy heavily.
Yes, which I don't know how heavily he was featured. I think he was in.
I mean, let me put it this way: the main thing I remember from I Am Weasel, other than two things actually, was like when I remember like a commercial that they made for it. Like I had like a videotape of like a Bugs Bunny marathon that they did for Cartoon Network, like celebrating his birthday or whatever. And like it was like a commercial advertising it, and like the red guy was like the director for I Am Weasel and I Are Baboon. He's like, right. Hello, girls. It's me, your director.
Me.
Me.
Yes, we'll get to that.
Let's just do a super cut of all the animation, all the times in animation we have a character saying, "And me, you're me," and we'll have that intercut with that scene from Great Muppet Caper.
Does "and Pearl" count?
Yeah, sure. Let's put it.
And also the fact that my older sister and older half brother like tricked me into saying I am Weasel, and for years they called me a weasel because of it.
Yep,
well, that's just mean.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute.
And also made fun of me that they kept saying I had a tail for some reason.
Yeah. Well, were you legal at all?
What do you mean? Was I legal?
Yeah, were you legal like Joe the Legal Weasel, or?
No, I wasn't legal weasel.
Did you like coffee at all?
I don't drink coffee even to this day.
Okay, never mind. Then the weasel, there's no silver line. They called you Weasel. We have to move on. Okay, so
yes,
but yeah. So for me, Cow and Chicken ultimately is a performance piece that I think that really carried. I think Adler's performance is really what carried the show. There wasn't a whole lot to it story wise, but it was darn funny. That's really the most I can say. It was insanely funny.
With like an emphasis on the insane.
Yeah, emphasis on the insane for sure.
And of course the show did garner some controversy here and there.
Yeah, occasionally. But one of the funniest crazy things about the show, of course, was Cow had a superhero persona that was Super Cow Rescate. Mm-hmm. So when Toy Story 3 happened, the first thing that pops in my mind when I'm hearing Buzz Lightyear Rescate, I think it's Super Cow for a moment. It's like, where do I know this from?
And of all things, it's Cow and Chicken.
I know exactly. When I'm hearing like the Buzz Lightyear Rescate, of course, the rudimentary Spanish I know. Wait a minute, El Rescate, I know that.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Like, is this on HBO Max? Do you know?
Well, if so, not for long.
Well, I'm gonna go quickly to HBO Max.
Well, I didn't mean literally. We have to check it now.
I mean, I want to find
Jacob,
out.
we're already kind of running low on time, man.
Yeah, I know.
What's your next number?
Besides, I can say my next one. It's Rocko's Modern Life.
Okay.
I was like, yeah, this is another one I kind of watched many years later when it was put onto Netflix. Like I was kind of like surprised, but like it was kind of created like as like their first in-house cartoon. Like after well, I was like, because obviously Doug, Ren and Stimpy, and Rugrats are technically created for them, but by outside studios. This is actually their first one produced in-house. And And you can definitely tell that they were letting a lot more slip in the earlier days when the show was being made, because one of the first episodes literally involves like a carnival ride with an elevator ride to hell. So, like, it's actually listed as such in the actual episode. But like, I can't really say much about this one. It's like I know a lot of the talking about people getting their start. Like, so many people that worked on this show got their start on this and went on to like become animation pioneers in their own right.
Oh yeah.
It's like not to mention like it launched the careers of Carlos Alazraqui, Tom Kenny, Steven Hillenberg, among others.
Pretty much this is the precursor to SpongeBob. You know, it's kind of the midpoint from Ren Snippet of SpongeBob in an odd way.
Yeah. It's like of course it's the work by Joe Murray, who later went on to create several other shows, like obviously Camp Lazlo, which Z and K just mentioned in his comment, and several educational shows as well. Mm-hmm. And of course he did recreate the movie revival after so many years with Static Cling, which is also on Netflix.
Yeah.
Like it is kind of interesting, like watching this show. It's like it is kind of relatable as an adult in a certain way. Like obviously it's like obviously more related to modern life in the 90s, but I think a lot of it is actually kind of timeless. Like Rocco navigating through life, as bizarre as his life was, it is oddly relatable in a lot of ways. Like I said, of course the humor and of course the humor is like it's very intelligently written show in a lot of ways. Like there's a lot of brazenly adult humor in a way, but like nothing like too like it does push the envelope quite a bit. But watching. I mean, like I said, this is obviously what I watched more when I was older and probably could appreciate the jokes more than I would have if I was a kid. I never really watched it at that point. So I gotta say, it's like for that I gotta rank it pretty. Not the highest on my list, considering it's not like a lot of nostalgia for it. I never really watched all of it, but from the episodes I've seen, like I definitely really enjoy it. Like I said, it's like it's kind of oddly relatable in some way.
Okay,
it's interesting that Slasher Fred is talking about Jungle Cubs that was a prequel to the Jungle Book, because my my number 24 is the true prequel to the Jungle Book. It's Tailspin. That's right. Oh yeah.
Tailspin.
Tailspin.
Now, let's face it, Shere Khan never looked as good as he did in that suit.
So Tailspin, to me, like what I was saying about premise, this is like the ultimate version of this. Like this show, honestly, all the episodes just totally blend together for me. But it's got such a good premise that it is elevated just based on that alone. I love the energy of this show. I love just how wild the crossover of it is. The Jungle Book of all, like you said, Dragon Shere Khan is just super duper classy. Baloo is the pilot, and I also think the original characters, they're okay. They're good. They're decent.
He said
it. But seriously, I don't know. I just put this on the list mostly just based on that premise alone. I really just love how audacious it is, and just how much of a throwback to kind of like the Raiders of the Lost Ark sort of serials. I'm sure that this series exists primarily because of how popular Indiana Jones was. Like, I'm sure that was like one of the big driving factors to even put it into production. And I don't know, like it just radiates 90s to me. Like I said, not a lot of very memorable individual standout episodes or anything, but I feel like the list wouldn't be complete without it, just because it just does have that sort of energy to it. It's got that sort of the Bart Simpson kind of too cool for school main boy character, the adorable girl character, the worried mom who also kind of kicks ass. I don't know. It's just a really, really fun. I just feel like all the, it's not a masterpiece of a show by any means, but all the foundations for it, all the ingredients for it are really there, and they do all come together in a very satisfying way. So yeah. Okay. ZK says, remember when I just talked about being confused about Max's bizarre aging process? My first glimpse of Tailspin. So many questions. But that's kind of what I like about Tailspin, though, is that I don't necessarily, like, to me, it's like, I just kind of accept it, you know? Like, I feel like I just kind of, like, accept it as this bizarre sort of Elseworlds version of the Disney Afternoon universe. And I feel like it works better than it should.
And again, this is like one that I was introduced to this before I was the Jungle Book.
Oh God, I can't say the same thing there, but yeah.
It's like I didn't get into my family's VHS tapes until much later in my life.
Uh-huh. Okay, I wonder what it would have been like if it included other residents of the jungle. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised they never used Ka on the show. From what I know,
are you sure they never used Ka in that show?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, like Z&K was a Ka, the Dawn Patrol, and the Vultures.
No, he sounds sure. So
like it probably would have been hard to fit Ka in. I mean, kind of it's hard to fit a snake into that kind of thing.
I think it would have been easier to fit him in than to fit the elephants in.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it would have been easy to. Would have been.
And
kind
the vultures are basically just the Beatles, so they're pretty like.
Well, they would have been musical.
They would have been musicians.
Yeah.
And Ka could have been obviously a hypnotist again.
Sure.
All right.
Okay, so let's transition. Number 23, Dragon.
Well, it's now dawning on me. This is very ironic, given it's a dumb pun, but it's The Mask, the animated series. Otherwise, another Jim Carrey 23, if you will.
Oh God.
Oh boy.
That is not intentional. It's now dawning on me. It's the number 23. What do you know? Anyway.
Spooky.
So yeah, I was obsessed as a kid, and I still am. I'm obsessed with the Jim Carrey mask. I love it so much. So especially when I was a kid, and learning that there was an animated series on the mask captivated me like you wouldn't believe. I was obsessed. I was on a hunt for VHS tapes for this thing. Mercilessly, I was hunting for the VHS tapes.
It's you're wearing like a hunter's hat. You pop out of the bushes like having like one of those big guns, and you're like, "Where is it?"
Sure.
Anyway, you'll pull out your binoculars, and you're like, "Is it over there?"
Yeah, and a big old butterfly net too, Jacob. Yes.
Yeah.
So. Point being, this was I love this show, man. So you had Tim Curry was the arch foe. He was kind of the antagonist, and you had kind of a character from the comics, which was Walter, like this big Frankenstein-looking guy who was always going after the mask, never spoke. So again, this is kind of the midpoint between the movie and the comics, which obviously they can't go as full tilt as the comics because they would have been arrested if they did that.
Oh God.
But yeah, so this is kind of like a grand midpoint between the two, which I thought was rather good. Because again, the movie did lean somewhat in the superhero kind of comic book direction, which again was kind of their kind of update on the very dark comics. But that's inverted to be a little lighter. And this was a lot of fun. I mean, Rob Paulson plays the Mask, and he is fantastic in this show. I mean, he was like such an excellent choice. And yeah, I mean, this was, again, it was kind of in general, this was like a parody of superheroes in comics, and it was kind of, look, if I'm being frank, it was kind of Diet Coke tick, but I liked it still, it was kind of during the big animated series boom of the time with the superhero shows, and they were kind of aware of that. And the only issue I have with the Mask, honestly, when I look back on it, is that when I really look at it with a fine-tooth comb, there's a lot of good stuff in this, but there's kind of a shelf life applied to this sort of concept with like a movie tie-in with any animated series. And unfortunately, when I look back on it, I think all the big, really interesting story ideas and all the big moments you could tell in this story were all in the first season, and it went on for 3 seasons. So that's the thing. I know the third season was rather short, and the end of the third, they ended the third season on the Ace Ventura cross, because there was an Ace Ventura animated series as well. And yeah, so that's kind of how they ended the whole show. It was kind of a crossover between those two. My point is, like, you had like these awesome ideas, like, okay, what if Pretorius was always going after the Mask? So in one episode in the first season, like not even that far into it, like the third, maybe like 5th episode, he got the mask and he put it on. I was like, well, that's kind of your big dramatic crux right there. We did that in the first season. It's like, where do we go from here? And then you had the occasional really good idea in the first season. I just kind of ran out of steam, but it was still like fun. So that's why I can't really give it too many points looking back on it, but it was just entertaining as heck, man. I just love that idea. I love everything we did with the mask, and it was, it was just really darn cool. And sometimes the villains are phoned in, but again, that first season though, that's what I'd recommend everyone check out. Okay,
Jacob.
All right. Funnily enough, my number 23 is another superhero show.
Mm-hmm.
Superman, the animated series.
What?
Oh, Jesus.
Really? 23?
Dragon, I'm a fan of it, but it's not even in my top 30.
Oh, never mind then. Go on.
I kind of figured you have my
reaction.
I kind of figured you have the reaction, Dragon.
That was a genuinely upset reaction.
You're like, what?
I mean, I get not being in the top 10, but really? I mean, for Eunice over here, I'm talking to you.
23 respectable, Dragon.
Not as good as 20.
All right.
Now I just go away. How do you feel about it?
You're about to say go away. All right. Listen, I can't really rank it higher because I didn't discover this until later, and even as far as other superhero shows, I don't hold it in higher regard. I mean, like, obviously, like, I think the best episode is the first Mixie Spitlick episode.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as you can see, like, and of course, I do really. I mean, I like it. I mean, it's a great series, and of course, like, it does have some like great, epic, funny moments. It really humanizes Superman in a way that you really don't see outside of the comics very often. I said, heck, it even humanized Bizarro in a very tragic way.
Oh yeah.
Like I said, I can respect it as like and it's probably like the best adaptation of Superman outside of the Christopher Reeve movie series. And in some ways, it even surpasses it. Like I said, I don't know why I can't rank it any higher, but I just hold it in the high of the guard as some of the other stuff, even the other superheroes, even some of the other DCAU stuff. I said it's a very fun, very well written series, but I just can't put it any higher than 23, unfortunately. Like I said, it's very, very, very fun, and a very good show. But I don't have any outstanding issues with it. I said it's greatly animated. It has like it's very fun and all that. But I just like other shows kind of better than that. And I wasn't expecting such a reaction out of you.
All right.
But
my number 23 is going to be another repeat. It's Rocko's Modern Life.
Just one after mine. All right.
Yep. Very much. It's kind of interesting because I feel like Ren and Stimpy has the higher highs when it comes to like the artistry and the memorable episodes. But I feel like what Rocko has over Ren and Stimpy is the characters. I feel like Rocko has a much, much better. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. The characters in Ren and Stimpy are memorable. You know, who can forget Mr. Horse? But they're not as consistent as the Rocko characters. And I feel like Rocko just has just a really, really great kind of fleshed out cast. Like, Heifer is the proto Patrick Star. I don't care what anyone says. He is absolutely the prototype when it comes to that type of character.
Funnily enough, voiced by Tom Kenny in this one.
Right. The big heads, just freaking classic. Love it. Like prototypical boomer humor at its finest. Let's see. And Rocco's just a great straight man to kind of hang all the insanity off of. Filbert, of course.
I'm nauseous.
Turn the page, wash your hand. Turn the page, wash your hand.
The dog, his dog.
Spunky. By the way, Jacob, did you ever play the Super Nintendo game?
Which one?
Spunky's Dangerous Day.
No.
Oh, it was brutally hard. Brutally hard.
It's a
Like I
great
said,
title.
I didn't even watch the show until I was like until it came on Netflix.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the whole point of the game is that you had to protect Spunky from all the from all these different obstacles. It was kind of an escort mission kind of game.
Oh god.
It was just like it was borderline impossible. But yeah, I very much feel like Rocco I don't have a ton of personal attachment to like any one individual episode. The musical episode is probably like the, with the whole big fourth wall break. That's probably the most memorable one for me.
And let's see, there's also the let's see, what was it? There's Zanzibar, which is like won an environmental award.
Yeah, that was the musical one with the compost deep. Yeah.
And let's see. I had
Wacky
another.
Deli. There was Wacky Deli.
I just had another one, but I lost it.
But yeah, I mostly put it on here because I feel like all the characters they just really shine. It's a great ensemble, probably the best ensemble so far on my list.
Oh yes, oh yeah, I remember now. Like the one where we meet Heifer's family.
Mm-hmm.
Again, another proto Patrick.
He finds out that he's adopted
Oh my god!
by wolves. He was
Who are you people?
And why his last name is actually Wolf?
He was raised by wolves, literally.
That's great.
A cow raised by wolves.
Look what the beaver done.
Oh god!
All right, number 22, Dragon.
Rocket power.
Heresy.
Yeah.
It's like
How could you put the definitive 90s show not in your top 10? No, I'm just kidding. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to be higher for me, but I get it.
I'm aware.
It's not on my. I didn't watch it, so it's not on my list at all.
Where's his heresy, huh?
Yeah, I didn't watch it. I said.
Yeah, exactly. That's his excuse.
I mean, maybe that's heresy in its own.
That's what I'm saying. It's heresy in its own right.
But like I said, I can't say I didn't like. I can't say I didn't.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, so
okay, never mind.
rocket power. So here's the thing. Rocket power. It's a bit of a gimmick show. Let's be honest. Again, in terms of being very indicative of the '90s.
That's another classic Chupo show, right?
Gillespie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Gillespie Goosebo. Yeah, it's honestly, this feels like the transitional phase to As Told by Ginger, which of course comes in the 2000s. This very much feels like kind of the stepping stone show, which honestly I feel hits a sweet spot, honestly, which I think really is in Rocket Power's favor, where there's kind of a perfect balance of kind of like the fun of the Rugrats, one could say, and then of course you have the they're not like it's not like a teen show, but it's like kind of Ginger is. Ginger's a coming of age story.
Yes.
Where this is not quite a coming of age story, but again, it's kind of like a skater life essentially. It's kids that live by the boardwalk. It's as I'm saying, this was kind of like, as a kid, you watch this and you get to vicariously, for the unathletic children like myself, you get to vicariously live out that fantasy through these cartoon characters. Like, man, if I could stay balanced on a skateboard or skates or what have you, I could be these kids. Yeah, I could say zine all the time. But yeah, it was I love just kind of the very unique kind of niche they had carved out there. I love the Shore Shack. Honestly I loved it when we got into some of there were a number of stand episodes with Rocket Power that always kind of captivated me, like Sam's Game, which we had the squid, the squid's kind of game about parroting everyone at the Shore Shack. I forget what the game was called, but you had that one. You had the beach, where they adopted a beach and they had to keep it clean. There was kind of it was a natural PSA about kind of like the environmentalism and stuff, keeping the beach clean. Big one for me, the dramatic one, was the hurricane episode. The hurricane hit, and they had to go in that awesome kind of Humvee to save Otto and Twister. It was a really cool one. And the definitive episode of Rocket Power, though, without question, the Tony Hawk episode.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's Tony Hawk is Willy Wonka for skaters, essentially, which is just a phenomenal idea. I love all the little challenge rooms and everything. It's delightful. Of course, nowadays it's very commonplace. Back then, it was like a huge idea. Like, oh my god, it's like a challenge. It's like it's like the whole mystery room or anything, like the escape room thing. But But yeah, I care about Otto and his buddies, and I care about these kids, and I like them kind of hit the heavy stuff like with Tito missing his family in Hawaii and everything. We did a lot of good stuff there. I did enjoy Rocket Power, but again, it was just a demographic that was a little skewed a little too 90s in the 90s, but it was good though.
And I don't really have much. Like I said, I've never watched this, but one of the most memorable things related to this show is like when we did a debate on like doing a movie or reboot of this of Nickelodeon cartoons. Like I think it was Tiki or where someone picked Rocket Power, and like one of them was like a drug addict.
Well, I think my pitch is that they were all burnouts. And they were just like very disillusioned with the way that culture has turned out, and all they want to do is go skateboarding, but they're getting older, so skateboarding isn't even really that viable of an option for them nowadays.
They probably cast Kristen Ritter as Wedge.
Oh God, John Mulaney is Sam.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Jacob, you're number 22.
Yeah, kind of an interesting pick considering what he just did. Timon and Pumbaa.
Timon and Pumbaa.
Yeah. But
Timon.
Again, another one that I actually watched before the movie, which spawned from. And while some of the other ones actually did keep the tone of the movie at hand, it's like this one really kind of like took these two characters and was like, okay, how can we make this so unlike the movie? It
didn't keep the tone of the movie, but it definitely kept the tone of the characters.
Well, yeah, but yeah, for sure. It's like basically it's just like they took Timon and Pumbaa, these two comic relief characters from The Lion King, and basically just put them in any kind of bizarre situation they could imagine.
It kept the tone of one and a half.
It gives zero fucks at all about continuity.
It's like one episode they're just enjoying a cruise ship, another one they're in like modern day, they're like in ancient Spain, and then like another episode they're in space in another episode. Some of the early episodes were musical numbers, like Stand By Me was a memorable
Oh
segment.
yes. I actually think that was the first time I heard that song.
It probably was for me too, actually. It probably was for me too, actually. I think, and of course, like the yummy, 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 all the bugs in my tummy, all that stuff too. Basically, but yeah, I could say more about this show. I do specifically remember watching this show when I was younger. It's like part of me saying sorry a lot is probably I actually got it from Pumbaa saying it all the time. I kept saying, I said, why do you say sorry to us? Because Pumbaa says it all the time. I do remember having that conversation, funnily enough. But like I said, as you said, the show really didn't give anything about continuity. Like there were like characters like Quint who basically fulfilled whatever, like as we were talking about earlier, with like Mr. as like the red guy, like filling like the need of whatever villain or antagonist or whatever the episode needed. You could tell it was the same guy, but it was something. But he was like looked differently every time.
Uh-huh.
I was like, yeah, and I did rewatch it last. Well, I keep saying last year, but last year I probably mean like 2021 on Disney Plus. Yeah. But I still think a lot of it, strangely enough, holds up in a way. Like, I mean, it's one of those shows you can just like, if you're going in there not knowing you're going to get like highbrow entertainment or anything, like just turn your brain off and just laugh at just like whatever kind of insane antics that these guys can come up with. Like, I'd say it's a lot of fun. It's like basically distilled zany cartoon madness. And it's actually a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Like it never takes itself too seriously. And of course, we got some segments with like the hyenas and Zazu. Like one of the standout Zazu ones is where he forgets to count himself. He's off by a day or whatever.
Why does he have to count anyway?
I don't know.
Like, what's Zazu's real function in The Lion King? He's
basically the major domo.
I guess that's about it.
Yeah, but like I said, there's not a lot of continuity, but obviously there's really no continuity even between the movie and the series itself. So,
Jacob, everything that happened in this cartoon is canon to the movie. What are you talking about?
It's people try and fit the canon of Timon and Pumbaa into the Lion King and see how it works. I mean, there's stuff that doesn't even make sense within episode to episode. Like sometimes even within like the same 2 pairs of episodes, there are things
right?
there are things that contradict each other. It's like obviously there's like probably just written separately, then put together to fill out a time slot for whatever reason. But like I said, it's a lot of fun. Like I said, it's like you're not expecting anything much from it, and it does have some very clever humor and everything, visual gags, puns, any kind of humor, you name it. Like I said, I think one of the more memorable episodes is where they visit the giant clock. And I mean, that's the one that always stands out to me, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think I'm done with Timon and Pumbaa for now.
All right, number 22, the Magic School Bus for me.
Nice.
So yeah, the description of Miss Frizzle is like a Willy Wonka type teacher. I like that description, and I'll tell you why. Because the reason I am drawn to this show now as an adult, I mean, obviously it's got a major nostalgia factor. For me, this was like the go-to rainy day thing that all the teachers would play in elementary school. Like, it was like if there was a rainy day, we knew we were going to be watching Magic School Bus.
Or Bill Nye the Science Guy.
I think Bill Nye was more of a, like, they would actually work Bill Nye into the curriculum itself. On my end, at least.
I think that happened too, but it was either that or Bill Nye, depending on the situation. But go on, sorry.
But yeah,
rainy days. Yeah, put on Magic School Bus during rainy days.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it just has this kind of like weird dark energy to it. Where you almost don't know if you can trust Miss Frizzle entirely. Yeah. And I think I actually really like that about the show. Because, I mean, Miss Frizzle is kind of...
she might get him killed.
Exactly. It's not that she is, like, outwardly trying to kill them. But these are very dangerous situations. And Inside Ralphie was indeed an existential nightmare. And I do have very vivid memories of... on rainy days, just praying and hoping to God that we weren't going to see the Inside Ralphie episode, anything but the Inside Ralphie episode.
Here's a question: do you think? Because there's a joke in it in the opening about.
Let me put it this way: if the Inside Ralphie episode did come on, I was taking a 30-minute bathroom break. I did not give one fuck. I would sit there in the toilet stall for 30 fucking minutes, counting it out to myself because I didn't have a cell phone to keep track of the time.
Wait, did that really happen?
Yes.
Okay, so so let me get this straight. So you're sitting there, they're putting the episode on, and if the text came up, Ralph's sick day, it's like, can I use the bathroom? And
I swear to God, this is a real thing that I would do. Yes.
How many times do you think it happened?
Maybe 2, maybe twice.
Okay.
The specific title is the Magic School Bus Inside Ralphie, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
let's just say Cousin Janet probably had a point.
So here's a question. So the top of the opening of Magic School is like, I think Arnold has like a gag about this wasn't on the permission slip. Do you think
Arnold? No.
Do you think those kids actually have permission slips for all these field trips?
Fuck no.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there's an element because there's no permission slips. Their lives are indeed in jeopardy,
and they're probably not approved by the school board.
That's what I'm saying, man.
But it's magic, so they'll be fine.
All right.
Well, I'm sure there's some Arthurian lore that would disagree with you, but okay.
So guys, I'd really like to keep this under 2 hours. No pressure or anything. But number 21, Dragon. What do you got?
Doug.
All right.
Doug.
Yeah, so of course, as I mentioned earlier,
Generic Kid the show.
What?
I'm sorry, I said Generic Kid the show.
You have no poetry in your soul. So, anyway,
I have it ranked higher than you do, Mister.
Oh, that's nice.
I don't have it. I don't have it ranked at all.
Okay, saying correctly, he has no soul. So, kidding. Anyway, yeah, so as I mentioned, there's like 3 demographics at launch with Nickelodeon. Again, you have kind of your kids, you have the adult crowd, and in the middle, you got Doug. I know not technically in the middle, but then in the middle, you have Doug. And yeah, I mean, for me, yeah.
Technically, Doug was the first one to air.
Well, that's what I meant, not technically in the middle. So, yeah, this is them kind of balancing things out with kind of the relatable underdog, if you will. not the underdog. But yeah, I mean, for me, ultimately, what I like about Doug is that Doug is like Nickelodeon's version of Happy Days, and guess what? Makes me happy. I like it. It's he's very Richie Cunningham-esque, and of course, we do kind of an inversion of the Fonz, where it's like there's an unconventional friendship there. Only what the Fonz was not as cool and just kind of a green guy who's kind of a bully, but he's not really good at it. I just love the mundanity of that Doug was again. It was mundane, but again, that was kind of rare at a time for animation. Again, Doug and Arthur were kind of in the same boat in terms of let's just do a show that's not all about the action adventure. Only difference is Doug gives you a little bit more action adventure with the Quail Man fantasies or the Rick Danger fantasies. And yeah, I mean, for me, a couple episodes. There are two episodes that always jump out to me with Doug. Just two. There's Dinner Date, which is kind of a food animation special. That's about the liver and onions, where he has like this. He's going over to the Patty Mayonnaise's dinner party, and they're gonna serve liver and onions, which his Doug's like, Auntie does not eat that food, man. It's like he's got an issue with it, so he has to conquer that fear. It was very well animated, liver and onions. I like the themed cowboy restaurant they went to at the end. It was always a good third act, I felt. But I tell you, man, when I look back on Doug, there is one episode that just kind of like brings me to my nostalgic knees, and it just breaks my darn heart with how kind of moving it is. It's called Doug's Birthday. Doug's Birthday, man. You see, Doug's father is feeling. I see. I believe the rich girl. I think her name's BB. It's something very close to BB.
BB Bluff, yeah.
BB Bluff. It is okay. So it is BB. Anyway, so yeah, he sees. Doug's father bears witness to the expensive birthday present the rich girl got, and he feels bad that he won't be able to give Doug like a good birthday present. So he opens kind of a photography business, and he's working himself to the bone. He's kind of killing himself practically in terms of his soul. And there's such a gobsmackingly human moment where Doug sees his father putting on a smile despite being bare bones tired, and it's such a moving father-son moment that always really got me. And I was like, oh my god, this episode is just so. Every time the episode came on, I was just so moved by it. I call it on rerun. So Doug had a lot of good episodes, and it had just a lot of just kind of like real kind of slice of life stuff that really just kind of carried. And it was kind of a nice rarity of sorts. So I don't know. It was something Nickelodeon brought to the table with a couple of their shows. I think really between that and Morocco and some other shows we get to. I don't know. Something really kind of special about that. So obviously very superior to the Disney rebrand. That's all I really got to say on Doug's. Doug's nice, man. Doug's just it's a nice quality show that never gets quite the buzz that I think it deserves.
Okay, Jacob.
All right, man. We actually have a repeat for my final one, Johnny Bravo.
All right.
And I can't really say much more about Johnny Bravo than what you've already said. Obviously, it's obviously watching back on it. I mean, this is one that I definitely caught more as I understood more of the humor when I was older than I did when I first watched it. And of course, I recognize a lot of the names from what they've later went on to achieve and the people who worked on the show, obviously. But I guess talking about the episode that always stuck out to me was ironically enough, the one where Johnny, I would say the one where two specifically, one where Johnny his most healthy relationship was when he went on a date with a deer.
God. Oh yeah.
That was his most healthy relationship.
Sadly, yes.
And it was with a deer. With a deer woman.
She was a deer woman, all right, yes.
Yes, she was. I don't know. That's just the sheer surreal nature of it, and the fact that it was the most healthy out of all of his relationships was the most hilarious to me. And also the volcano sacrifice, where it's speaking of jokes I didn't get till I was older, they required a virgin sacrifice,
and it didn't go well.
And the volcano spat him out.
Yep.
It's that's a joke I didn't get till I was older, but I was so that's what it meant.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so in order to keep things brief, I can't really say much more about it, but it's I remember Johnny Bravo, and I still think it holds up to this day, especially if you look at it through a specific lens of oh yeah, this is how not to act around women. All right, moving on. Tiki,
round us out, Tiki. What's the big 21 for you?
All right, big 21 for me. Something we've already gone over. Angry Beavers. Yeah.
Huh.
Pretty quintessential 90s show for me, very much. I love the dynamic duo element of this show. I feel like it very much paved the way. Like I've always kind of looked at Daggett and Norbert as kind of like the prototypical Mordecai and Rigby. It's not like a 1-for-1 parallel, but I feel like there are a lot of kind of like similarities between the two of them. Drug and I agree that I love the bachelor pad. I love kind of like how interconnected it all is with the dam itself.
Yeah.
And, just that whole thing. The two most memorable episodes for me, and they're two really big ones that stand out. The staring contest, which was just brutal if y'all remember it, because there is a lot of just straight up painful close-ups on how dilated their eyes are. And then the episode where they're trying to stay awake all night.
Like that's a relatable one from what I'm getting. I haven't seen that one because I've only seen like the first few episodes, but trying to stay up all night, that's definitely relatable.
I just remember Norbert like kind of taunting Daggett in that one, like, "What's the matter, Dag? You feeling tired? Your eyelids getting heavy?" That was actually the first time I'd heard the expression, "Are your eyelids getting heavy?"
Wait, really?
Yeah.
I call bull on that. Really?
No, that was the first time I heard it.
That was the first time you ever heard that.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many like common phrases we first hear in cartoons.
Huh. So I feel like those two episodes really stand out. Not a ton of other episodes stand out, and I feel like the biggest issue with this show for me is outside of the two leads. You have Barry the Bear. He's a chill guy.
Yeah.
But there's not really a lot of other characters. Like it's very light on the actual, like, the character roster.
Let's face it, Tree Flower had butt kiss.
Right. But the two leads do very much hold up the show. So all right.
Go on. Sorry, I'm done.
I just go ahead. I'm done.
I was gonna say, and of course, as Dragon said earlier, it's like early vehicle for Richard Stephen Horvitz.
Yep.
Would later go on to be famous for voicing both Zim and, of course, Billy from Billy and Mandy.
Do you want to see like the number recap thing, Tiki?
Oh, yeah. Let me get rid of that. Thank you. Okay, it's gone.
Well,
it doesn't matter because our thumbnail's locked in anyways.
But... Well, no, not that. I mean, Tiki, do you want us to like say list off the 10 again or no?
Oh, no, we can do that at the start of the next one.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, that's it, folks. Just want to thank Z and K, Slasher Fred, LEB, Aquated, Aquatad. Let's see,
Sophia Penosa.
Yeah, thank you, Sophia.
There's a Brian here, Brian Nussbaum.
Yeah, the one who said that Rob Paulson ruled the '90s.
And Atomic Beast.
Yeah, so a lot of comments here. Actually, guys, I got to tell you, the comments, there were just so many comments this time around that this is a rare time that I just straight up kind of gave up on reading them. I'm sorry. There were just too many of them.
You gave up. Don't phrase it like that.
Well, it's not like there's a function on YouTube that would guarantee the comments get read or anything like that, Something I'm very hesitate to plug, but it is an option in these situations. Just saying. All right. I'm sorry.
The problem is you're being so big, people are not going to know remotely what you're talking about right now.
I'm talking about Super Chat.
There you go, kids. There you go. You want it absolutely said without question or hesitation? Super Chat.
Yeah. All right. But I am very, very happy about the how many people have been watching this live. It's going to be a 3-part series. And so, yeah, we'll have the second part out soon. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Good night, everybody.